everyone. Thank you all for being here tonight. I'm Robin with the Ramsey County Historical Society, and I want to welcome you to this very special edition of History Revealed, part of our Making Minnesota series that talks about the forgotten, unexplored, and untold stories, histories, and experiences some of the worldwide immigrant, African American, and Indigenous communities that make up Ramsey County. So we're really pleased to have you here. I hope everybody's doing okay after the storm tonight. If we do get any bad weather, we will certainly excuse anyone who has to leave. This program is being recorded, and we'll have it up on our RCHS and Eastside Freedom Library's YouTube channels in a few days, in case you missed anything. So I want to thank the Eastside Freedom Library and the Roseville Library for their support and partnership for our History Revealed series. It's been many years now, and we just love having these partnerships with both organizations. And I want to thank our members and friends for being here tonight. If you are not a member of the Ramsey County Historical Society or of the Eastside Freedom Library, then please consider joining. You can check out our websites, and I'm going to put that up on the screen here in just a second. There we go. www.rchs.com and eastsidefreedomlibrary.org. And then also check out the Roseville Library website. They've got other great programs, history series, and so forth. And we'd like to thank them for their sponsorship and partnership as well. So in May and throughout the rest of the summer and even into the fall, we're going to have some more great History Revealed programs in our Making Minnesota series. And next week already, we have Patrice Johnson talking about Swedish immigration and foodways. So that's going to be a great program. She's a wonderful presenter as well. So as a reminder, please keep your microphones and personal cameras turned off during the program. If you have questions or comments, feel free to put them in the chat, and Peter and I will read those out for our presenters to answer. And then if we have time at the end, you'll be able to turn on your microphones and cameras, and we can all talk together. Again, I just want to remind everybody that the program is being recorded, and it will be up on our YouTube channels. We have a statement that acknowledges this sacred Dakota land. Minnesota Mekoche, the land where the waters are so clear they reflect the clouds, is the ancestral and contemporary homeland of the Dakota people. It is also home to the Anishinaabe and other indigenous peoples. The Ramsey County Historical Society acknowledges that its sites are located on and benefit from these sacred Dakota lands. Ramsey County Historical Society is committed to preserving our past, informing our present, and inspiring our future. Part of doing so is acknowledging the painful history and current challenges facing the Dakota people, just as we celebrate the contributions of the Dakota and other indigenous peoples. You can find our full land acknowledgement statement on our website. Again, it's www.rchs.com, and it includes actionable ways in which Ramsey County Historical Society pledges to honor the Dakota and other indigenous peoples of Minnesota Mekoche. And I'm going to turn it over to Peter Ratcliffe from the Eastside Freedom Library to say a few words and introduce our presenters. And I'd like to thank them for being here tonight and all of you. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Robin, and welcome everyone. This is a very special evening for us because we are in a partnership with the Hmong Archives, the most important collection of Hmong documentary materials, books, and other important historical documents, the most important collection in the world, in the Hmong diaspora. And we're thrilled tonight that we have Marlin Heise, who is a co-founder of the Hmong Archives, even though he tries to avoid the credit. Marlin was a lifelong worker at the Minnesota Historical Society and left it to really begin the Hmong Archives. We also have Dr. Brian Zhang with us. Brian is a PhD from University of Minnesota at Mankato and is currently an adjunct faculty member in American Studies at Macalester College. Both Marlin and Brian have been on the board of the Eastside Freedom Library. Marlin unfortunately finished his sentence and was allowed to escape, but Brian continues to serve on our board, much to our benefit. Tonight's program focuses on a new book that Marlin and Brian have produced. And I want to point out that Brian has also become a publisher with a project called Hmong Educational Resources Incorporated. We encourage you to look at their catalog, a remarkable collection already of new knowledge produced about Hmong experience here in the United States, but also throughout the diaspora. And I also want to mention that we have a small new program at the Eastside Freedom Library to purchase and share books that are discussed in programs like this. This was a program funded by the Phillips family to honor the memory of Danny Phillips, who was a progressive attorney in Great Britain, mostly working for the Mine Workers Union. And as a result, we have 5 copies of the book that is going to be presented tonight, Sunrise Over Wat Thamkrabok. And if you would like to get a copy of that book, send us an email at info@eastsidefreedomlibrary.org, and you will have this beautiful book to share with your family. So I'm going to get out of the way and turn things over to my colleagues, Marlin Heise and Brian Zhong, who will be telling us about this great book and about the important experiences of our Hmong neighbors who came to us through the refugee camp in Wat Thamkrabok. Marlin, you're up.
And that means, will I be switched onto the big screen, or can I just hide up there in the corner? I was born in 1941, so that now makes me 81 years old. And on a farm out in Yellow Medicine County, Western Minnesota. So connection with Hmong in Laos, Thailand, Vietnam, Southern China is very, very kind of haphazard. I always on the farm was interested in tropical birds, and they came from places like Laos, where I had a clipping from a 1952 magazine of the National Geographics that had this Hmong woman with a lengao, is a kind of a green parakeet. But only much later did I make any other connection with that. I've worked 25 years at Minnesota Historical Society as a book cataloger from 73 until 98. In 1981, in May, is when, put this one up in front of me, I met a Mr. Tsua. He was 20 years old at the time and a high school student working half-time and studying half-time for the summer session. He came in the afternoon when I was not there, and the next morning I was told a student would be working with me. And this had never happened before, so this was kind of a difficult situation for me. When he came in, he first said, "I quit." And I thought, no, not quite so fast. I had worked in Germany and Norway, and being a foreigner or non-native and working in such places was a lot of fun. And so I figured the best thing I could do is sit down and talk with him a little bit, find out how much English he could read and write and such, because in a library that's sort of necessary. And after we sat and talked for a while, he began to sort out Minnesota government documents. This led to meeting hundreds of his schoolmates and cousins and friends. And that was in May of 81. In 82, December, I went to Thailand for the first time. And I stayed with his uncle, Blia Cha Ta, in Ban Vinai refugee camp for 1 month. Now, how would you, crowded into a refugee camp of 30,000+ people, be able to take care of one large white elephant like me in the refugee status of no income and other such problems? Is really amazing. What a wonderful time I had with people over there for 1 month. Leaving, I had too much baggage to carry back. And so some of those, especially silver coins and silver bars, were left behind. And to get in the Song Teo and go back to Loei and on to Bangkok was really a sad time, because I'd never see them again. So I went back the next year and many other times. 1998 is when I went the first time to Laos. When I came back, there was this thin possibility of retiring early because the state didn't have enough money for Minnesota Historical Society. And Steve Trimble, professor of history at Metropolitan State University, and also the representative on the east side, had put through a one-time only $75,000 special grant to collect Hmong Minnesota history. And I had met Mr. Yu Peng Shong and his wife Shua at Hmong ABC, Hmong Arts, Books and Crafts, the first Hmong bookstore. And he had been an intern in '94 at Minnesota Historical to see what we didn't have. Minnesota Historical only collects those things about Minnesota and the bordering lands. So a bit of Manitoba and Ontario, Wisconsin, Iowa, the Dakotas. They are not much interested in Hmong in Laos or in California or other parts of the world. And after I came back, this idea of a Hmong organization to collect materials was really started. Back there in Ban Vinai, I had met Sia's brother, Kua, and and my next door neighbor, Roy and Cindy, had his mother and step family living there. In '92, Ban Vinai and other refugee camps were all to be closed because Thailand no longer wanted refugees from the secret war, Vietnam War, inside of their country. And so those people who were undecided could not go back to Laos because they feared for their lives with the communist government. They had fought against them for 10+ years. And they didn't really, want to come to the United States because they had also heard this rumor that was spread around that big white people were eating refugees. And that kind of was early fake news that was taken to heart by many peoples in the refugee camps. So instead of going back to Laos, where they would maybe face death, or coming to the United States, France, Canada, other countries around the world, they really wanted to stay in Thailand. Many of them escaped then to Wat Thamkrabok. This would be a Buddhist temple north of Bangkok, about 2+ hours, some maybe 100 miles. And it meant there had been a few Hmong who went there in the in the earlier '80s for drug treatment, because this was the important thing at Wat Thamkrabok. And I first had gone there, I believe, in '98. I've gone back and forth to Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, so many times that it begins to be kind of confusing. And then, in '98 is maybe the first time I had been in Ban Vinai. 2004 is when the mayor of St. Paul and a delegation of mostly Hmong people from St. Paul went to Ban Vinai because, went to Wat Thamkrabok, because One time only, 15,000 people were to be brought out of Wat Thamkrabok and resettled in the United States. And about 6,000 of them would come to the Twin Cities. And so Kua and neighbor Roy and Cindy's mother and step family had both moved to Wat Thamkrabok and many others also. And I kept on going back and forth to Thailand. And one of the places, either going north or coming back to north out of Bangkok, or coming back to Bangkok at the end of the 2 months, 3 months over there, would be to stop at Wat Thamkrabok. In 2004, I met some of the people who were in the delegation, and that was kind of a surprise to see them, St. Paul people, in the restaurant in Wat Thamkrabok. But it was possible. 2006 is maybe the first time that I went back. One time I had gone there and there was a barbed wire fence around the entire settlement. It wasn't a genuine refugee camp because it did not have United Nations UNHCR approval. And so it was not funded in the way that other refugee camps had been. And that's what made some of the people really think seriously about coming now to the US instead of just waiting. But about half of them also just disappeared into Hmong Thai villages and stayed in Thailand, or maybe across the border in Myanmar. One of the people I liked to talk to was a Monk Gordon. He'd been a US military man from, it seems to me, from New York. And he had always been collecting photographs and papers and other leftover stuff whenever the people were called and relocated to the US. And so he had a huge box of miscellaneous stuff, which he said he would be willing to move off to the US Embassy and get it shipped off to us at Hmong Archives. I met him one time at the hospital in Prabhudabat, is the nearby city, small city, at the hospital, and he had very bad foot problems and maybe other difficulties. Later on, he was to go on the regular walking journey of Buddhist monks, but he died. And all of the things that he had collected were most likely then destroyed, and none of them came to us at Hmong Archives. When I always went, I am kind of an old people, and I want to make sure that my feet are landing properly on the ground. And so I would always want to be able to see what is underneath the feet. And I usually wear flip-flops over there. And that's another reason you don't want to be stepping on poisonous snakes and other stuff that might be there. And so while I was there, I would always look and I would find stuff. And I think Brian is later going to be showing some of those things that we did find. One of them would especially be, and this is sort of backwards, this is a photo of a skirt that we went always to the Hmong American New Year at the Metrodome. And one time, Yer Vang saw her photo in that picture. From the Minneapolis Star Tribune, and she said that was her. So we asked, on the table here, is there anything that you recognize? And she said, that's my skirt. And we said, no, that's Hmong Archives skirt. That is museum quality. That got picked up, left behind by people in Wat Thamkrabok, picked up and taken to the Hotel Net in Lopburi, the monkey city in nearby Wat Thamkrabok, and washed and brought back to United States so that it could be shown to the grandchildren. There was another pair of pants, of soccer pants, that are to me about the most embarrassing, sad business that I ever know about in my 20 plus years of working at the archives, simply because I took all of these things to many different exhibits at schools. And I think this was at New Millennium over 10 years ago. I held up the pants, and one young man, maybe now 15, 16 years old and quite big, had said, when I asked anybody recognized them, he said they were his. And I thought, oh no, they can't be his because these are for a little kid. Well, in 5 or 10 years, 5, 6, 7 years, a little kid would no longer be quite so little, because in this country, people feed their children quite a bit and they will get bigger and bigger all the time. And so some year I would hope before I'm gone to be able to find that young man whose green soccer shorts those are. So every year I would collect things when I go there. The last time was in 2020. And that means we have many boxes of stuff about Wat Thamkrabok at Hmong Archives. And then it is maybe time for me to say, oh, thank you, Corinne Pearson. You're one of our big donors of miscellaneous stuff from the no, the mind is blank up on Grand Avenue. And so we will say, I am now finished with my part of talking, and we will hope that Brian is ready to do some talking also. Yeah.
Well, thank you, everyone. First of all, thank you for all the participants for joining us tonight. We appreciate that you are here to join us. But I also want to thank you, the Ramsey County Historical Society, the East African Library, and the Roosevelt County Library for hosting this event tonight. It is important for us, especially non-Hmong, to understand where this Hmong population came from, why they are here in Minnesota. You know, I remember going to school and people telling me, go back home, go back to China, but I wasn't born in China. You know, my ancestor from China. I was born in a refugee camp in Thailand and moved to Wat Thamkrabok, and then here I am in the United States, in Minnesota, but people keep telling me, go back home, go back to your country. And I said, well, a lot of people don't know who we are. So I'm glad to, you know, also work on this project and tell, you know, the story of the Wat Thamkrabok families. So before I start, let me share you my PowerPoint. And okay, are you able to see my PowerPoint on your screen? Okay, yes. Thank you so much. So this project, it was actually took almost 2 years, I would say. I always want to tell the story about my parents, about the Hmong experience, about the Hmong family from Wat Thamkrabok. Even though I was born refugee camp, but I spent a good number of years and months in Wat Thamkrabok. And my family were one of the few who first, you know, went to Wat Thamkrabok, and then until more Hmong refugee moved in, then my family moved away. And even though I was a child in Wat Thamkrabok, I still remember many great memory, both good and bad. And Wat Thamkrabok, the clouded of the Hmong family in a you know, in a building where, you know, most of the people who live there are also non-Hmong. They are there to get drug addiction retreat to help themselves. So I thought, well, it's a good idea to put this book together. But the first thing was to have a strategy plan, how we're going to put this Wat Thamkrabok book together, right? And when I proposed the project to hopefully get a small grant, and whether I get the grant or not, you know, I still going to do this project working with the Hmong archives and say, hey, look, let's put this project together for the community. It is not about whether we get the funding to do the project or not. It's about how can you save the story, save the, you know, the memory for the younger generation. Because I look at my parents now, they all passed away, and I don't have any story about them. I don't have any collection about, you know, what they've been through, or any photo memory about where they've been. So I thought, let's just put this project together. Whether we get the grant or not is fine. We're just going to move forward and help the family. And we applied for a grant, and we gave a very small a grant from the Minnesota Historical Society, Minnesota Community Center, I'm sorry, Minnesota Community Centers for a $5,000 grant to put this project together. And so the strategy plan was, you know, in early January 2021, we were compiling our collection of Wat Thamkrabok, you know, together. And then the next month is to, you know, photograph and scanning and everything. And then by March and April, and I supposed to do the interviews, you know, 15 families about their Wat Thamkrabok experiences, and then I had to transcribe them together. But then in 2019, 20, and 21, you know, the goal was to do in 2020 and also 2021, but we had the COVID, and it's hard to talk to many of the parents when, you know, they cannot be outside, or you have to be social distance, or you cannot meet them at their house. And sometimes hard to do any interview with parents, especially the elder, when they don't know how to use Zoom, or you have to, you know, do a phone call, and I have to show them the question that what I had planned. And so I thought maybe the best way to do this project is not to interview, to, you know, maybe the best way is to have a photo collection. I believe that sometimes when when you describe something, words or sentence, it can say many things, but when you have just an image, the image actually tell 1,000 things. When the photo, you know, you show a photo, it can tell 1,000 things. You don't need to have description. You already know where this place, what happened here, what's behind the background, right? And I thought, well, maybe one of the best way is to think back about the elders. And during the 2017, before the COVID, and back in November 17, 2017, at the East Side Freedom Library, we had the, the reunions for the Hmong Wat Thamkrabok, and many of the families travel from Wisconsin and travel from other state, and also local here in Minnesota. They came to the reunion, and they're so happy to see what we have collect at the Hmong archives.
Yeah, I know it
And-
does get hot, but like just
Yeah, and so they're so happy to see what we collect, and so happy to see many of the photos, many objects that Marlin and I picked from Wat Thamkrabok, and they're just amazed, what we have. So they've been asking, have you guys thought about put a book together? And so when I had this, when I think about put this project together, I think about those comments by the parents about put a photo book together that hopefully will save the memory for their children. So one day when they're no longer here, the children can look through their photo image of what they've been through in their life journey. So I thought, well, one way to do this is to look at the Wat Thamkrabok Reunion and what the comment that Hmong parents have shared with me. And so, and the Wat Thamkrabok, the actual project when I start with the Wat Thamkrabok was to tell the stories and to put a call for interview, if people would like to be interested to tell the story about what happened to them with the Wat Thamkrabok, and that was the goal. So with that, I already came out with many questions working with Marlin and the team at the Hmong Archives, and these are some of the questions that we hope to explore. Maybe people can just tell us their name, their age, when they were born, whether they're born in Wat Thamkrabok or they're born in a different camp, or they're born in Laos before they come to Thailand and to Wat Thamkrabok, and how many years have they lived in the Wat Thamkrabok. So we have a long list of almost 2 pages that have specific question what we're looking for. Then again, the COVID hit, and I thought the best way to do is to have a photo that tell the story rather than interview, because photo will tell more story than just description about people telling their own story. But when you have photo image, then it shows you exactly what happened. So give an example, like here in the photos on the left, you look at that photo, you you know that this is happening in the market street. This is where the kids, the family, everybody interact at the same time. You have the grandma, you have the kids going to school, and you also have the other kids looking for, drinks, Pepsi or maybe other sweet drinks. And I thought, well, this is an amazing project that we can just put a photo book. And so the Hmong Archives has ton of collection from Wat Thamkrabok after the Hmong Wat Thamkrabok refugee came here to the United States, and we collect, item like, like plate, pot, chairs, any object. And the hard part of this project is, is to take hundreds of photos of our collections. But then the person who take the photos, which is Wu and Marlin, they do most of this with the backdrop, a white piece of paper. Now, the part that takes the most time is my time, which I had to crop those image of those objects into more professional and making sure that they actually, will look good into the book. And so as you can see from the left, which is the object they're taking at the Marlin's house, at the Archives, and also at Marlin's house. And then on the right is the the photo that I had to go, one picture at a time and one object at a time to crop it to make sure that they look great on the book and to give description of what those things are. As Marlin shared with you earlier, this is a soccer short that a Hmong boy left in the refugee camp in Wat Thamkrabok, and then I have to look in this photo and make sure that I crop that in the nice way that it still represents what the object is, rather than just I have to crop every detail about, okay, where is the edge, what's the line. So this is how it looked like when we put the project together of the Hmong archive collections of Wat Thamkrabok. And you can see after we crop the image, we put together, we give description of what they are and where this, when were this collected and the years and the description and where we found them. But adding to the project is not only the photo that Hmong archive collect, we want to making sure that this book will have a rich history about the archive collection, but also what about the community collection? What about the United Nations embassy and the refugee settlement, name, who had those? And we do have some copy of that, and people, donate a few of those registration books to the Hmong archive. So we want to make sure that we have a full detail about, this photo, about this project collections. And so as you can see on the table of content, we make sure that we have different chapter. So the goal when I did this project, start with and working with Marlin, was to do about 200 something pages. This book actually ended up with 500 plus pages because we have a lot of collection from the community, and many community members who are now in the United States. They share their story, they share their photos and what happened to them and what what had they brought with them from the old country, and we put all those photos together. So this is the table of content of the books. But the main idea behind the book is to dedicate to those who have lived in Wat Thamkrabok, and we specifically dedicate this book to the Hmong refugee from Wat Thamkrabok. So in a dedication, we want to tell them that to all the Hmong refugee, to all the Hmong who have lived in Wat Thamkrabok and now scattered around the world, we dedicate this book as a memory of good and bad time together. Because living in a clown refugee camp in Wat Thamkrabok, there are good times, there are also bad times, there are also family who pass away, who might happen to register with the family to come to the United States, and then a few weeks after that, they could happen to pass away, and they could reduce the number of enrollment from the US Embassy. So when I type all those records, I can see the number have changed from one family to the other. There are some family might add a newborn, right? Or some family might decrease because there are somebody passed away in the family. And so for me going through those records, it just it opened my eye how sometimes you're in a very close refugee camp, thing happen, and there are good memory that you walk down the street with your family or your grandma, and now you no longer see your grandma because she passed away before you come to the United States. And then also when you come to the United States here, you look into the old memory, you go, well, most of my family here, and sometimes our grandma are buried in this place and we still miss her. So I want this book to, to represent what the memory actually behind and what talk about, and to actually dedicate to the people. And I want to share this piece, which Marlin talked a little bit earlier, and I want to read this for you and how my family and I, we actually get into Wat Thamkrabok the first place. This on the top here is a BB, a family photo ID of my family, which is my parents, and then my sister, my sibling. And the small image you see down the bottom, that is me when I was, around 6 or 7 years old. But I want to read the yellow highlight here for you, okay? I was born in refugee camp in Thailand in 1983. My parents and three older sisters settled in the camp 8 years before I was born. Sometime in the early 1980s, many Hmong families who resettled in the United States sent a white cassette tape to the camp and informed the remaining family about Nga, which is monster in America, that white people were monsters and they ate people. This rumor scared many Hmong parents and elders. My father was the oldest son and the caretaker of his siblings after my grandfather passed away in Laos during the war. He and his 3 younger brothers did not like what they heard from the cassette tape about Nga and additional information about the dysfunction of new Hmong American families and the family value in America. The brothers decide that it would be best to escape Bang Vinai camp to Wat Thamkrabok, and Buddhist temple located in the Phuttabat district of Suryapuri province. The uncles' families and my father's family, along with many other Hmong families, were the first group to settle in Wat Thamkrabok. When arrived, we lived among a number of people with drug addiction who were seeking treatment or rehab in the Wat. Wat means the temple. As a child grew up in Wat Thamkrabok, I remember running around on the second floor of the white cement building, which many Hmong people call Jada. I remember playing cop and robbers with other Hmong kids around my age, and we would chase each other up and down the stair from floor to floor. And some of my friends, we would snuck outside the building to play marble. And so the book actually go a little more detailed. Now I actually talk about how we had to share the bathroom with, doesn't matter what age you are, they just divide by genders, and we have to share different places. And how families, sometimes some of them who have money, the kids could able to go to Thai school, but a lot of time the female or the girls, they were, they were farmer, and they're trying to grow their own crops and try to help the family. Most of the men will, move out. They will, find job outside the temple to support the family. And then when the family, the more Hmong family came to the Wat Thamkrabok, that's when my father and his uncle decided that they should move to different locations. And so in the photo, we include the Hmong archive photo collections. These are photos taken by Marlins, right? And many of some other photos that I also taken from my camera. And we want to show what actually happened in Wat Thamkrabok during the time when they were still living there. So we have a ton of photos shown in the books. We want to show where, Hmong family, when they travel, they go to shopping outside of the Wat Thamkrabok, they go together in a car, not like in the United States that you have to have a seatbelt on. Everybody just on the pickup truck and just go, and together. And, you think about all those memories where you have friends and you meet together and go in one car and go shopping and meet another location coming back to the refugee camp, and those are many great memories for many Hmong, women and parents who, even though they struggle, but the friendship that they have with the neighbors during that time was beautiful, that you connect to your neighbor who look like you, who speak like you, who also struggle like you, but you have that connection that we are going together and we support each other. And then in the photo, we also show, the street where people live, the store, and places where people also get the rice, if they're not able to go shopping, and the other people shop for them. Because a lot of time, many things that you want to purchase might not available in the Wat Thamkrabok, so you have to go outside the Wat Thamkrabok to get those. And then we also show photos where, the gate of the Wat Thamkrabok and the road where most Hmong people, especially Hmong parents and students, they're very familiar when they walk to school or when they travel outside the camp to buy food. And we show the Jada, which is the White House, and we have many photos of those. Then at the same time, we also want to show houses and shelter where they were breaking apart after the Hmong people, the refugee, leave the camp. And we also want to show photo of a few graves that are being dig of the Hmong, deceased family when there are Chinese people came to Wat Thamkrabok and dig those graves. We had no idea why they did those, but we want to show image of those events that happened in the Hmong journey. And then we also include Hmong community photo collection that's shared by Hmong families and parents, and about what they took and what they bring with them here to the United States as memories about the journey in the past. So we show photo of the Wat, for the temple. We want to show different age group from children to teenager to adult to elders. And this photo collection, we want to show family when they were still the Wat Thamkrabok, so they can look through some of these photos. And many of these individual now, they are college students, or they might be high school, and when they see this photo, they go, hey, that is me. That's when I was 2 years old, 3 years old. So it's good to see people go through those photos and they say, hey, that is my child, or this is me when I was this age. Then we show photo of family, they take together in the Wat Thamkrabok. Also, ceremony that they did in the camp, the cultural practice that many of the Hmong families still practice, regardless where they are. they still continue with their cultural practice. And so we want to show some of those as well. We show photo of their name that they register before they come to the United States, and they always check on the board to making sure that the name being called out and when they're going to get ready to, transfer to the United States. And we also show photo of the New Year celebration. Even though they are in a refugee camp, they still continue with their, the practice of, New Year celebration, dress in Hmong traditional clothes, and the young men and women can meet each other while the elder can come and watch the young couple toes and ball back and forth. So we want to show additional, so the photo, actually we have ton of photo, but we want to show photo of some of the image that happening in the camp, like they go into the movie theater that cover with, that the movie theater that cover with walls, they call the metal wall. Also movie cover, movie advertisement, how people can pay to go inside to watch a movie theater. And also we want to show the stores where people can go purchase their food, and many other activities that are happening in the refugee camp there. But the last important piece is the United Embassy Refugee Settlement list, the list for the registration. And this one take a long time to go through each one of them, to making sure that I got all the name correctly and their number of family are correctly, and if there's someone passed away or someone being added to the family, make sure that those numbers actually match who they are. So I had to retype the whole registration into a Excel sheet before I transfer it into the book, and that list has the name of the people, which is the head of the household, and they all go by last name of the 18 last name of the family. So they start with the Cha, and then it go all the way to the Yang, and it will have the number of family, then the address of their Wat Thamkrabok when they were in there, the Wat Thamkrabok number, right? And then we also have the U.S. case number including there too, so people can tell who they are. So many people might have the same last name, same first name. So give an example like Cheng B, there might be two Cheng B, but you can tell which one's you because you have 5 family in your registration. The other Cheng B might have 3, so you know that, okay, when my family register, we actually have 5, so we might be the 5 one instead of the 3 one, so that way people can tell that that is their family member. And then as we put this book together, we want to thank the people who actually contribute to this photo collections, and many of those individuals are also in social media and they share the photos, and the Hmong community member of Wat Thamkrabok group. So we want to thanks them for sharing their story with us, or their photo with us. And this book also available at the Her Publisher website. So if you do interested to purchase one, you can check the Her Publisher, and we also have this book available for you as well. But I just want to stop here and leave this open to anyone who might have questions, rather than I do most of the talking here. I love if you can ask question, because when you ask question, then I know exactly what you're looking for.
I would have one comment about one thing that we did not cover very much, and that would be the grave desecration. Because after almost all the people were gone, there came a time when many of the graves were dug up. And later I have found our uncatalogued books about grave desecration committee, because that was one of the real painful parts of the story of Wat Thamkrabok.
Yeah, so I saw there is a comment in the chat about how did we come with the decision of, what photo that to be color and what photo will not be in colors. Again, we want to include a lot of photos into the books, and the goal was to have about 200 pages. And so if we were to include, 500, 500 pages, almost 2,000 photos. And if we were to put everything in colors, that would cost a lot of money to print those in colors. At the same time, the photos that we have from the community are also very old photos. So we want the section of different color, the one that we already took it, And when the Hmong family, they're already in color to represent the people. And the one in the non-color, which is the community collections, we want that to be, the same, consistent with the rest of all the photos that we have which not color. So we put those two not in color because that way it become more historical. But we also believe that the collection from the Hmong archives with the object collection, as well as the photo that taken by the Hmong archives, those already in colors. Many photos that taken by family, some photo which might be in color, but the color was not clear. So when you print those in color, it actually did not look very good because some of them, they don't have, some of the family don't have a camera back then, right? And it's really hard for them to, take photos. And some of them have photos that were destroyed, like half of the page already damaged. So we felt that it's best to put those photo in not color because we already have ton of photos that are already in colors. So thank you for the questions.
So we want to encourage people to type questions into the chat. I also want to encourage people to come and visit the Hmong archives, look at some of the original photographs and other materials that are there. Because of the pandemic, we're still asking people to make appointments and to wear masks. But we would love to have you come and actually see the materials. If I may, I want to ask a question of Brian and Marlin. And that is, how have the people who lived in Wat Thamkrabok maintained an identity here in the United States, or even more specifically in Minnesota? What is their place within the larger community of Hmong and Hmong Americans? Do they still see themselves as having a particular identity and story?
I cannot speak on behalf of the rest of the Hmong family who from Wat Thamkrabok, because my family also from Wat Thamkrabok, and I can only speak on my own experience and also from my own family. So my experience might not reflect the rest of the Hmong family in the community, right? So for my family and my sister, we always know that Wat Thamkrabok is a special place for us. We were there, and even though we're here in the United States, and I came here as a young age, went school here with bachelor, master, and doctoral, I always know that Wat Thamkrabok is a special place for me, even for my beloved parents. Even though we identify as Hmong Americans, and I also identify myself as a 1.5 generation Hmong American, which means that I was born in other country, but grew up here in the United States. Wat Thamkrabok always have a place that, when I talk to other Hmong refugee, and when I ask them question, how long have you been here? And they say, oh, we came here not too long ago in the 2004, 2005, or 2006. And I said, oh, so you must from Wat Thamkrabok. And they say, yes, we're from Wat Thamkrabok. And then, hearing the story, then I say, yes, I'm from Wat Thamkrabok too. And then, when you could identify a place that you've been there together, and then you can share the story. Yes, this is what happened during that time when my family and I were there. What happened during the time that your family was there? And they will tell different unit, different section where they live, and I'll tell them where I live. When as the first group who actually moved into Wat Thamkrabok, and they also tell the story when they are not the first, but they are maybe on the whatever number they identify, and they talk about which section they live, which area they live, and what they remember the most. And so some of the memory that I have might be a little different than their memory, but I also know that a lot of time when we share the story about the Wat Thamkrabok, we share about the temple, we share about the place where people go and get the treatment, and those experience, the street, the gate, the mango tree, a lot of mango tree, the Buddhas, monks, and we talk about all, everything in the store and this, in the schools where the student go to learn. So those bring a lot of memory. And when I talk to someone who are not Wat Thamkrabok or who are born here, the story could be a little different because they don't have the same experience that I have. But when I talk to someone who has similar experience to me, I can feel a deeper connection to them because what they describe to me is also bring me a lot of memory where I used to be.
Thank you, Brian. Go ahead, Marlon.
Anecdotes that I have heard would be something about when first the Wat Thamkrabok children started going to school, the old established Hmong Americans really would think about them as being, you know, the country cousins who didn't have a good education in the old country and were now really studying English as second language. And many of them who were born here wouldn't have had any kind of experience like that. And so they would be able to point fingers quite easily at newcomers. There was
Thank you.
also
Go
this
ahead.
question about closing the camp. That I don't know totally the beginnings of. Thailand really wanted to have no more refugees inside of its country. And I think there were up to 30,000 people at Wat Thamkrabok at some time and another. And about half of them disappeared and could not get back in order to get, if they wanted to, in order to get on the list to come to the United States. So there was this list of about 15,000 approved to come to the US. They would have to still go through tuberculosis and other exams, medical exams, so that they were not opium users would be one of those problems. And that just meant 3 years of slowly moving busload after busload off to the airport and off to parts of the United States.
Yeah, one other question
Now
asked.
there are still maybe 3 or 4 families living there who would never be coming to the States. And it's kind of curious to go walking around on the grounds of the former settlement there, because there seem to be a lot of new buildings that I think are going to be used with a drug rehabilitation program, so that as the people are going through the herbal medicine treatment, I think is what it really usually is, then they will be moved into much more upscale kind of living conditions. That we had 2 books, but one I can't find anymore, about an Irishman writing Dead Drunk, about his experience of coming to Thailand and later deciding that he really loved the Thai woman that he was with, but he was such an alcoholic that he would never be accepted. So he went off to Wat Thamkrabok and went through the drug treatment program and wrote about it. One book doesn't mention the Hmong settlement at all, and the other one does. And that's one of the references that we would have.
So one other question you asked in the chat about the experience between, you know, younger generation and the elders, and definitely the elders or the parents have different experience compared to the, you know, the children like myself. The parents, you know, living in the Wat Thamkrabok, they think about how do you bring income, how do you bring food, how do you bring meals on the table, you know, for the family. And the parents always have, you know, they always have to find way to feed the kids, you know, how to, you know, keep the family survive. But as kids, we, you know, as children, so those refugees, we don't think much about, oh, what I'm going to eat, you know, my mom and dad already have everything ready for me, right? So we have different experience compared to the parents, but at the same time, you also have gender, you know, different experiences where the male or, you know, some of the husband or father figure had to, you know, leave the camp to find job outside with the Thai, you know, whatever Thai people could offer them job. And then the woman, they had to, you know, look after the kids. And some of them are farmer, you know, they had to farm. Some of them had to find way to, you know, make money, like sew the pandao, you know, with the needlework art to sell those or send to their cousins. And many other Hmong, you know, men, they also make sao, you know, which is the necklace that Hmong people wear at the New Year, and they will build, you know, burning stove where they can make metal pieces into sao and ship those to the United States for Hmong American to purchase for New Year celebrations, and that could also become an income for the family. So definitely there are different experience from different gender, from different, you know, ages, and from different, you know, from old to young, and also from grandma to grandpa, you know, how they also look after the kids while they're their son-in-law or daughter-in-law have to, find money to support the family to pay the bill. So each person had their own different experiences. Some family could have different experience where they move out of Wat Thamkrabok, and then now they know that the Wat Thamkrabok have, people, the refugee also have a chance to come to the United States, and some of them might move back here. They Wat Thamkrabok. Many of them don't even know where they're going to end up, and they are already in Wat Thamkrabok. But because there is not a lot of information, many of the family move out of the camp and they never come back. So those could be different experiences. There are people who did not want to come to the United States at all, even though here most of the people registered to come. Some people like to be a country where they could, communicate with other people. Some people don't like things to change, come into a new place, they don't know. They don't know what's like going to be in the United States. They decide not to come. So there are people who decide not to come, and they might have different experiences as well. When I talked to the elders who are from Wat Thamkrabok, and they told many great things, many great stories, and which will be another part of their, which I call the second edition. It will be the interview. The interview is to actually have their stories, to have different age, different gender, to know that what did you do for living, or what did you do, what type of activity that you did in Wat Thamkrabok, what was like for you, and maybe some woman, they might really want to come to the United States, but then the husband decided, no, we're not going to come to the United States, and they might delay months and years until they finally make the decision that, hey, we're going to go to the United States. And that's what happened to my family. My mother, she very want to come here to the United States because her side of the family are here, her brother, sister are here, we have cousin here, but my father never wanted to come to the United States. So in a patriarchal society like the Hmong, when the man is the head of the household, he made the decision for the family. And when he said, no, we're not coming to America, then we all got stuck here. We cannot come to America because he said no, right? So that could be a different experience for other people. And some family might be, the wife might be the one who make the decision and say, look, we cannot stay here anymore. We have to think about the future for our children. So we're going to go to America. There's no place to go. The Thai people don't want us here. We cannot go back to Laos. So we have to go to America. And whether you decide or not, I'm going to take the kids. And sometimes the wife can make the decision, say, we go, and the husband just follow through, right? And there might be family, maybe the father and the wife very want to come to America, but their grandfather say, no, we're not going to America. I'm old here and I want to stay here. So the grandfather made the decision, everybody's stuck there, right? And there might be a situation where the son and his wife and his kids come here and they live and they left the grandpa behind because he chose not to come. So there are different experiences for different families.
I want to mention too that at the East Side Freedom Library in the Hmong Archives, we have a diorama of the Ban Vinai camp that was made by Jackie Yang. And if people would like to see how a camp was structured on the scale of Ban Vinai, you should come in and look at this diorama. It's quite an elaborate representation of what the camp was like. Are there other questions? Or maybe some of you, have stories that you want to tell and add to what we're hearing this evening. Robin and Bailey, shall we unmute everybody and let them show themselves and speak if they would like?
Yes, why don't we thank you all for being here.